Welcome to ReThink You, bringing you ideas, inspiration, and motivation to start living the life you were created to live. Here is your host, author, trainer, speaker, and coach, and founder of ReThink You, Kim Lovings.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the ReThink You podcast. I'm really excited to have you today because Barry Overton is our interviewee of this episode. Barry is a Gulf War veteran and a retired police detective, and he's also initiated many business ventures, including concert promotion, a catering business, a security alarm company, and real estate. And most recently, Barry has stepped into being an author and a speaker, and he just released his first book called Ignite Your Greatness. Just an incredible book. I've read it. I absolutely loved it. And I'm excited to interview Barry about this because Barry believes that life is short and therefore we should live every day with the intention of fulfilling our dreams and doing things that make us happy. So Barry's purpose is to share with others how to identify their greatness and live to their fullest expectation. So I'm sure that you're excited to hear from Barry. So Barry, welcome to the ReThink You podcast.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you. So I'm not going to do a lot of talking, Barry, because I know you have an interesting story to tell us. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your journey of how you stepped into your identity and getting good at what you're doing right now?
You know, and it's, I have to take you all the way back, probably 50 years or so. I'm 52 years old and just starting with childhood. And it was a matter of connecting the dots. Steve Jobs has a quote where he states that we can't connect the dots moving forward. We can only connect them looking backwards, but we have to trust that they will connect in the future. Well, the dots of my life, when I started looking back, probably about 10 years ago, it took me all the way back to childhood and just realizing that at a very young age, realizing that we were growing up in a poverty type of situation and experiencing homelessness for a short period of time, experiencing actually an episode of being in a foster care facility for a couple of different situations. And I think I had almost buried those thoughts, but they just recently came back to me. But it all goes into the process of also during these situations of poverty and a tough childhood, also learning lessons from that. And through the process, realizing that, okay, I know that there's better in life because I was also exposed to people that were family members, to people that were close friends to my mother, that were also living a much better life than we were. And so I knew that there was something better out there. And it was through that process that, at the age of 17 years old, I had formulated a plan of what at least the next 10 years of my life would look like. And to formulate a plan at that age is one thing, but to actually execute it, when I look back on it, it's mind blowing to me. And it was literally, I made a decision at 17 between my junior year of high school and my senior year, the summer. I decided that I wanted to be a police officer and I wanted to go into the military for my first 3 years after graduating high school because I knew I couldn't become a police officer until 21. And I was going to pursue that. And I did exactly that. I enlisted into the military. I didn't actually go in until I graduated, but I'd already made the decision. So going into my senior year of high school, I knew exactly what the plan was. And that decision was really made because of the fact that I knew that I didn't want to have questions in regards to what's next after high school. I had some scholarship opportunities, but I'll be honest with you, I was burnt out on school at that point. So but I knew that I had to have a plan. And I can tell you in my book, Ignite Your Greatness, one of the areas that I talk about is having a plan and the importance of that. And I can tell you that having a plan just eased any anxiety that I had in regards to life and moving forward from that point on. So it has been a integral part of anything that I do in life now at 52 years of age. Everything's, it starts with belief, but then the next cornerstone of creating success for yourself is having a plan. So that's really been, a big part of my growth process.
That's wonderful, Barry. Thank you for that. And I think what you said is really important, and I want to draw an emphasis to it, because I often say to people, you can't just dream for something and wish for it. Having a plan on how you're going to execute is part of reinforcing that belief. So thank you for drawing attention to that. And obviously you learned that. What else were some of the life lessons that you learned from some of those setbacks and that tough upbringing?
So there were so many from an instance of at six or 7 years old, my second grade class, I actually attended 3 different elementary schools just in second grade. And this was, again, during that time frame of homelessness. And when I say homeless, from a standpoint, my mom and I were really on our own. We didn't have a place that we could call home. We were living with relatives. So I did have a roof over my head. So I don't want to take it, from a standpoint of being 7 years old and just out on the streets. But I didn't have my own room. I didn't have my own home. We were staying with relatives, and we stayed with quite a few during that time, where it put me in a position as a 7-year-old kid of going into 3 different elementary schools in one grade. And so, I think looking back on it at 7, I don't think it really had an effect on me, but I think of it as an adult. And if it was a situation for my kids, I can imagine that was really tough on my mother because of having to go through that process herself, but more importantly, having to go through it with me, as her son and as her child. And, I think I really, as a kid, one thing about children are very resilient, and we kind of, as children, you roll with the punches. Is when you become more of an adult, we lose a little bit of that resiliency. But what it taught me is to remember resiliency. The fact that I was able to be resilient as a child, I should be even more resilient when as I'm growing up as an adult. And so those were certainly, some of the areas of setback, but they were, I always talk about in life, there's not wins and losses, there's wins and lessons. And in those areas where you feel like you're losing, you really just have to look at it from a standpoint of, what can I learn from this particular thing that has set me back to get me back on a winning path? And when you have that type of mindset about the losses, so to speak, in life, and make them the lessons, it's a whole different trajectory that it will take you on in your life.
Absolutely. I think that's really important too, Barry. So you've given 2 fabulous nuggets there, both in terms of resilience and being able to bounce back and see losses as learnings, and then also having a plan. I found myself wondering, thank you, first of all, for your service, and having gone through the Gulf War as a veteran and then being in the police department for as long as you did. How much of your structure and your planning do you think came from the training in those 2 disciplines? What did you learn? And the reason I'm asking this is many times people feel that the job that they're in or what they're currently doing is kind of a waste of time, and they're not on track to what they want to do. And I encourage people to stop and see the lessons in that too. So what do you think was sort of some of the life shaping for you that took place as being in the military and then in the police?
And, I always tell people that, so at 18 years old, you go into the military and you're conditioned, because what you go in as a civilian, but you come out as a soldier. And I remember going in and one of the drill sergeants saying that we are going to break you down and build you back up. And what we build is going to be a machine. It's going to be a soldier. And there were some aspects of that that really that did hit home for me. But there was because of my mom being I wouldn't say strict, but she was very much a disciplinarian. And I learned, I was washing dishes at 7, 8 years old and making my bed. And so I had a certain amount of discipline in my life very early on. So the military, honestly, even though they were breaking me down, what they built back up was a lot of the same person, because there was a lot of the discipline aspects that were already there. But I can tell you that, again, this was the first time being on my own. I'm 18 years old. And when you think about it, the reality of it is at 18, as an adult, pretty much all of my adult life, I've been out on my own and I had to figure things out. So it did give me those abilities of critical thinking and decision making, and especially the profession that I chose of law enforcement, because I was a military police officer also. So instantly as an adult, I'm making split-second decisions that could be life-changing for either me or someone else. So it gives you a sense of responsibility very quickly. And I can tell you that 26 years in law enforcement, one of the areas in my personal life that I learned I needed to have more fun. I needed to be a jokester and just enjoy life, because everything was so serious, and that was what I was trained and taught on because of the profession that I was in. So as I got older, I remember people would, when I was a police officer and I'm in uniform, and people would walk by and they would look at me and like, man, you should smile. And my response to them would be, I am. and doesn't look like a smile to the rest of the world. But so I needed to learn to just enjoy life, have fun, be happy, make fun of myself. And so, that was some of the great benefits of the early on with the career of the discipline. But fortunately, I was open-minded enough to know that, as I got older, that I needed to make transitions for myself.
That's powerful. Thank you, Barry, because too many people forget that you only get one life. It's good to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And have fun while you're doing it. And, often the fastest path to success is also developing what you're already good at. So I wanted to sort of explore with you what strengths have emerged, and how has, that whole lifetime of learning, how has that built your strengths and your competencies to position you for what you're doing right now? Because I know that, your passion and your voice come through strongly in your book, which I highly recommend everyone read. But talk to me a little about what you see as your strengths and how you've honed those for this new chapter in your life right now.
And I look at those strengths all as blessings. And it's interesting, when people look at my career, Gulf War veteran, police officer, turned businessman and real estate agent, author, and speaker now, and they think, wow, man, that's just such a vast array of different professions, and many of them are very different. And many people that meet me now will often say, man, I can't imagine you as a police officer, because of this sternness that most police officers have. And I can tell you, I did have that as well. But there was a skill set that I learned, and probably one of the best skills that I learned is that in law enforcement, you have to have a mindset of being a psychologist to a certain degree, because you go into situations where you're dealing with people that, in most cases, people are at their lowest point. You're dealing with very dangerous situations. You're dealing with dangerous individuals. And you cannot go into one of those situations thinking that arresting someone or physical force is going to is the solution in every one of those situations. So what I did learn to do very well is talk to people and understand people. And it was through that process that it opened me up to what I like to call the psychology of sales, for instance. And in life, I hear people all the time, especially in the different businesses that I've been in, say that I'm not a salesman. But they're not, and they're speaking of themselves, they're saying that they're not a salesperson. And I believe that in life, we are always selling. When we're dating someone, we're selling ourselves on that person. And I can tell you, as a police officer, I went into situations where I was a salesman. I was trying to sell the idea to someone that is belligerent, they're intoxicated, they want to fight. I'm trying to sell them on the idea, let's not fight. You're going to have to go to jail. I'm selling them on the idea of going to jail without them resisting arrest with it. And when I understood, if I got the ability to do that, man, I could probably pretty much sell anything. And it was that aspect that opened the doors for me to entrepreneurship and realizing, okay, there's so many other aspects of life that I want to touch and be a part of. It's just like you said a minute ago, we got one life, we got one shot here. And one of the biggest things that I learned in in high school, when I quit on a dream, is the feeling of regret. And I told myself, man, because I wanted to play in the NFL, and I gave up on that dream at 15 years old for multiple different reasons. And when I look back on it in my mid 20s, I've always had this what if I would have stuck with it? And there was such a feeling of regret in regards to not sticking out with my dream. And that's the thing that was the lesson I learned, is I never want to feel regret again. So that's why I have such this eclectic volume of different things that I've done in life, is because when I have an idea of, man, I think I want to do that, I do it, because I don't want to, I'm 52 now, and fortunately I'm in great health and I can still do, pretty much anything that I want. So I do, because I will get to an age where I'm 75, 80 years old, and I'm thinking, what if I would have done that? And as one of my mentors, Mr. Les Brown, talks about all the time, is, someone being at their deathbed, and the not the people around them, but the images of their mind and their thoughts being around them, and saying, their dreams, their hopes and dreams and wishes being there, and saying, we are going to the grave with you because you didn't pursue us. And I don't want to be that person. So it's kind of put me in a place of just living the absolutely fullest life that I possibly can.
Oh, Barry, that's powerful. Thank you for that. And as you were speaking, I was reminded of Jim Rohn's quote where he said, discipline weighs ounces and regret weighs pounds.
Yeah.
So none of us want to experience that regret. And also, listening to you talk, I know that I'm familiar with somebody else in the industry, who's also in the police arena, in terms of helping people police from a behavioral health point of view, how to take that kind of compassionate understanding. But listening to you talk, I found myself thinking, what would you say to youngsters? Because I know many people who end up in a life of crime and bad choices in life. It's coming from a place of pain. They don't know any better. And at the root of it is normally fear. And I think that there is an epidemic of hopelessness right now where people are just spiraling. So if you had to sort of address somebody who was facing critical choices at a young age, what would you say was the one thing that helped? And there was probably many, but what was the one thing that helped you flip that switch from the negative spiral downwards, rather than saying, I can do something about this? So what was it for you that you could pass on?
I love the question, because it was a decision, and it was, two sides. It was a decision of doing right or doing wrong. And part of the reason I was able to make that decision at 17 to become a police officer, I had a role model. I had someone in my life, my uncle. He was the first Black sergeant, lieutenant, captain of the Austin Police Department. And this was my role model of what life could look like doing the right things. But I also had role models, so to speak, of people in my life, family members, close family members, like brothers and cousins that had chosen a different path. And to, I always joke around with people and I say, and I didn't want to go to prison because I don't look good in orange jumpsuits. I like black and white and things of that nature. Orange is not my color. So I made the other decision to be able to choose what I wear. But the real part about it is that, again, I knew even at a young age that life could be so much better than what I had. And fortunately, I was exposed to people living much better lives than what I had, and I just continued to dream and want for the things that they had. And one of my favorite quotes is Tony Robbins states that if you want to be successful, find the people that have achieved the success that you want and copy them until you achieve the same results. And that's, I've taken that and I've used that time after time after time in regards to anything that something new that I'm trying to learn how to do. I find someone that is a master at it and follow their lead with it. And that's really been the thing. It was just making the decision and making the right decisions. And I'm, at a young age, I'm glad that I made the right decisions because, again, we're very impressionable at those young ages. And when you see people that are doing the wrong thing, but they're making money illegally and things of that nature, it's easy to be swayed to go that direction. But for me, fortunately, I had the foresight to also think, okay, but in most cases, you don't see them grow old. If they grow old, they're growing old in prison. Or they're dying young in the streets. And so I had the foresight to look beyond what they were currently doing and knowing what the potential was. And I didn't like that. So it helped me to make the right decisions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Barry. Great response to that question, because I found myself realizing as you were speaking the importance of that mentor in your life and to have people that gave you the role models. And it sounds like your mother, helped you grow up with that sense of discipline. So my encouragement to those who, sort of, for want of a term, have their lives together. It's like, who are you investing in? Who are you mentoring to help them on their life path? Because you may just be the person that makes that shift in their mind or helps them choose a different path. I'm sure that through all of this too, Barry, people talk about their personal values, and I want to go to the values question now, because I know for myself that our values tend to emerge through our life experiences. They're not just something that we just come up with. I think that we start living our values long before we put a label on them. So talk to us about what personal values you're aware of in yourself that you've felt you've implemented in your life and that you've aligned your life around, and how has that values alignment actually helped you?
One of my favorite quotes is a Mark Twain quote that says the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And for me, at 52, it was only 5 years ago I found out the why. I figured out the why. But I remember always wanting to figure out my why, the purpose. What is our purpose for being here? What am I driven to do? And I thought my purpose was law enforcement. And then I thought, when I retired early from the police department, I went into a different business. And I thought my purpose was that particular business. And it was as a coffee distribution business. So I thought entrepreneurship was my purpose. No, those were just the vehicles that were taking me to the purpose. And the funny thing is, I'd been living in my purpose my entire adult life. You see, I served for my country in the military. I protected and served as a police officer, even in the coffee business, because I was helping other people and showing them how to become financially free. I was serving I was becoming a servant leader and serving there. In real estate, I serve my clients. And what I found out 5 years ago is my purpose is the thing that gives me my most fulfillment in life, and it's service to others. Now, it can come in all those different vehicles, and I know that there are new vehicles in the future that will come also. But every decision that I make in regards to what I get involved with right now, whether it's from a volunteer standpoint, whether it's working with a nonprofit, or whether it's from an entrepreneurial endeavor, the first question I ask myself, am I working in my purpose? Am I serving others in this? So one of the biggest values that that's truly, when you rethink you and you're finding you, you got to stay true to yourself once you find you. And it gives me the most happiness to know that I'm serving others, and anything that I'm involved with, as long as it's providing happiness for me and fulfillment of knowing that I'm doing the work. And I say God's work because I feel that my purpose was given to me by God. And when I know that I'm working in my purpose, I'll do whatever that is. And the moment I feel that it changes and I'm not feeling right about it, I remove it.
That's wonderful, because I don't think everybody does that. It's one thing to recognize your value and live your value. And thanks for pointing it out, that it's an important part of who we are and how God's created us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also recognizing how to remove the things from your life that don't align to your values. What do you not want to do? And sometimes figuring out what you don't want to do is an easier starting point than figuring out what you do want to do. That's normally my advice to people who feel confused. So Barry, just a great story. And I think you've shared some great nuggets here. What would you say is your current sort of mission and focus? Because obviously you're still involved in real estate and you've now got the book, but what is your current mission that you're focused on?
So, and it goes back to the book and the personal development training that I'm receiving, but I'm also giving out right now, being able to really just touch others and get them to realize that there's so much more to life than just going to a job and paying bills and just kind of existing. And I think many of us, especially we live in a very interesting time in regards to the COVID-19 and what it's caused for us. I think many people have had now the opportunity to get still and get quiet and really think about their lives. And unfortunately, we've seen the suicide rates go up to astronomical levels that we haven't seen in the past, just because of our current events. But we're also seeing so many people that are doing online courses and personal development and really trying to find their why right now. And one of the biggest lessons, I want to be a part of helping people with that. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned in life, I read a book called Outwitting the Devil about 4 years ago, again, right at this time that I'm finding my purpose. And one of the most powerful pieces, when Napoleon Hill wrote this book, and he wrote it in 1938, but it wasn't released until 2008 because of how controversial it was expected to be. But I can tell you that when he sat down and he did an interview with the devil, and when you look at it and listen to the book, I listened to the audio, it's so powerful. And one of the first statements that the devil makes is how he controls 98% of the world. And he talked about how he controlled them through fear. And he even broke down the levels of fear from poverty to loss of love to old age, criticism, ill health, and death. And he talked about how poverty and death were his two biggest tools for being able to control people. And when I thought about it, when I read this book, I was experiencing both of those things. I had the death of a brother at the age of 58. It was unexpected. Even though he had ill health, his death was unexpected. And then 13 months later, the death of my father. So I had never had anyone that close to me, a brother, a sibling, and obviously a parent that to pass away. And those happened within 13 months of one another. And also I was experiencing poverty to a certain degree myself, because I had, since the age of 28, I had had a 6-figure income. And in 2016, I had my worst year as an adult, where I just made just 50,000 for that year. And it put me in a situation where, now, fortunately, I still had a roof over my head, but it took me back to those childhood memories that I experienced, that I told myself I never wanted to experience. And it could have taken me down a different path of feeling sorry for myself and looking at it as loss. But because I was in a place of personal development and I just read this book, I looked at it as a sense of, number one, okay, the devil is at work here, number one, and he's only at work in the lives of people who he thinks that are moving in the right direction of positive energy and things of that nature. So he's trying to creep in, and I'm not going to allow him. I'm not going to allow him to win this. And it was an amazing lesson for me that in 2017, I had my biggest year that I had ever had in real estate at that point. 2018 outdid 17, 2019 outdid 18. And even in 2020, I had one of the biggest years. 2019 is still my biggest, but 19 is my second, or excuse me, 2020 was my second biggest year ever in real estate. And it continues, to grow. I mean, we've started 2021 at a whole new level that I've never been at already. So those were really some of the experiences that I've taken, and knowing that I'm seeing the trajectory of my life right now. And I know that there's so many people out there that are in that same place. And maybe it takes just hearing some words from someone that's experienced it to be able to help them to get their lives back on that track as well.
That's powerful, Barry. I'm so glad you mentioned that book, because I've also been listening to the Audible. I actually have listened to it several times in the last few weeks, and I highly recommend it. And I'll make sure that I include it in the show notes. But what you were saying about how, the devil goes after people who, I think the term he used is drifting, that people drift, they don't have a sense of purpose. So what I always say in ReThink You is that by default, our default operating system is fear and anxiety and self-doubt. So unless you intentionally fill your mind with conscious thought towards your purpose and your goal, combined with the belief that you can do it, then there's no room in that equation for the devil to even try to get at you. He's not going to try, because he's got nothing to work with there. There is nothing to work with. So thank you for drawing attention to that, because it's just such a key lesson. And I also wanted to just sort of emphasize, what we learn from the death of loved ones, because we take life for granted. And, I also went through an experience of losing both my parents in succession of each other, over a period of maybe 18 months. But it was the same thing. And you think, wow, just like that, they're gone. And all the questions you wanted to ask them, it's too late. Yeah. All the things you wanted to tell them, it's too late. And how do we live life having walked so close to death? So thank you for sharing that, because I think people, some of the listeners are experiencing that syndrome right now, or the fear of poverty and the fear of illness, et cetera, that's come out of this situation of the pandemic of 2020, even though we're now in 2021. As I said, don't wish that 2021 will be better, wish that you will be better in 2021. And you're a testament to that, Barry. So thank you. I've loved listening to your story. And as we sort of close out, tell me, if you had to give one nugget, if somebody just fast forwarded through this podcast and they caught one little gem from you, what would that takeaway be that you hope would have an impact on somebody's life today?
I would say definitely as children, we learn how to dream. It was just natural for us to dream. as we got older, whether it was outside influences, environment, or our own thinking, we slowly stopped dreaming. And I can tell you, I have learned to dream again. And I say that it literally puts a smile on my face, because it takes me back. My biggest dream as a kid, I wanted to be Superman. And obviously, in the beginning, at 4 years old, when I'm wearing this terry cloth towel with the little safety pin around my neck and I'm running around the neighborhood, it's okay at 4 years old to do that. Imagine doing that at 40. They would lock you up, but one of the things I always tell myself is, okay, I didn't become the Superman on TV, but I was a Gulf War veteran. I was a police officer for 26 years. And now I'm looking to inspire others. That's pretty super, man. So I think that the dream, I'm living the dream of what I wanted as a child. So why not continue to dream as an adult and believe in those dreams like I did as a child? And that's how I live my life. And I think that each and every one of us should go back to dreaming. But the beauty of dream, it's easy to dream. We can sit in our homes, we can lay on our beds, and we can dream with our eyes open. But the key is believing in the dream, putting a plan behind that dream. And then the biggest one of all is executing, because we can do all those things without bringing it to the forefront. Once we execute, people know, okay, this is what they're trying to do. And that's where we become open to ridicule and criticism. And again, we go back to one of those fears that Napoleon Hill talked about in Outwitting the Devil, where we have fear of criticism and we got to push through. But if your belief is strong enough, you don't worry about those fears. So that's really what I would tell people that we need more of right now, is dreaming and dreaming big.
Oh, that's wonderful, Barry. Thank you so much. I think that this has been great. And I want to encourage listeners. I believe you're running a special right now, because I'm highly recommending that people get your book. But if you want to learn more about Barry, you could find him at igniteyourgreatness.com. And Barry will soon be publishing the hardcover book. And if you pre-order the hardcover book, you can actually get your own Ignite Your Greatness coffee mug as a daily reminder on your desk. So I'd encourage you to go and follow Barry's website and go learn more about him. And Barry, this has been a pleasure. You have blessed the Rethink You audience today. And I just encourage you to keep going on your Superman journey of serving others and helping others discover their greatness.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. It was a pleasure to be here. And I just love the conversation. I'm telling you, it just got me energized inside right now.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's what happens, you see, when we feed each other's sense of motivation and success. So absolutely. Thank you so much. And you have a great day, and best of luck for the rest of the year. It sounds like you're off to a strong start, Barry. Thanks again.
Thank you.